I'd like to say that animated graphic is an exaggeration of what it's like to deal with me at Jason the Couch, but truth be told, it really isn't. But hey, now, Blue Jay fans and Blue Jay fans or baseball fans in general with nothing better to do, I am your Feckless host, Steve Fek, punching your ticket to enjoy the views from the On Fek Circle, presented Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time by Jason the Couch and by the JFtC versus ALS campaign. It's time to retire ALS for good, and your donation in any amount to the JFtC versus ALS campaign is the perfect way to register a strikeout against this devastating, always fatal disease. Jason the Couch and the On Fek Circle are here to support ALS Canada in their efforts to find treatments and make living with ALS a bit more manageable and hopeful experience for ALS patients and their families. So go to alsevents.ca/Jason the Couch. That's alsevents.ca/Jason the Couch, all one word, to make your secure tax-deductible donation. And by the way, every dollar donated today and May 3rd will be matched by corporate donors to ALS Canada. So try to get those donations in as quickly as you can. And remember that 100% of the profits from the sale of all Jason the Couch, Sunny Side of the Dome, and On Fek Circle merchandise at our Redbubble shop goes directly to ALS Canada. And as an added bonus, every donation or purchase from our Redbubble shop through June 2nd will earn you an entry for a chance to co-host the On Fek Circle with me. So once again, go to the website alsevents.ca/Jays from the Couch to make your donation. It's going to be a fun show. It's not going to be the usual angry show. I think I still kind of have that happy hangover from having Lawson Creaser Fletcher on last week. He was just terrific. I mean, fans like Lawson are the future of the Blue Jays, whether it be on the field, in the front office, some kind of marketing crossover. I mean, that's the future of the Blue Jays. So it's always great to get his opinions and insights. He was terrific. He makes you laugh. He makes you think. So I really want to thank Lawson again for coming on last week. Plus, we have two pretty interesting topics. But first, I want to throw out a couple of ceremonial first pitches. The Jays from the Couch radio podcast, anchored by Shaun Doyle, streams at you live Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And Sunny Side of the Dome and host Karen Suter come at you Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The On Fek Circle, Jays from the Couch radio podcast, Sunny Side of the Dome, are available in podcast form anytime, anywhere your favorite podcast can be found. Be sure to subscribe and like. And all shows are also archived on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. And speaking of Facebook, be sure to join our Blue Jays Talk for All Facebook group so you can join our fun and enjoy the conversations. We host live in-game chats, and this weekend I will be reporting live from PNC Park, both during the in-game chats. I'm going to try to get a couple of videos and a couple of reports done pregame and postgame. I'll be there on Friday and Sunday. I live here in Pittsburgh, so I'm going over to PNC Park. It's less than a mile from my home, so it's very convenient. But it's going to be fun. It'll be fun to actually be there in the stands. So as you guys are reacting to things that you're listening to on the radio or watching on TV, I can kind of tell you what's happening live and in person for that. I don't go Saturday because it's a fireworks night, and it's sort of like, for a baseball fan, going to a fireworks night is sort of like going out on New Year's Eve or go down to Times Square. It's a bunch of amateurs. It's a lot of just ridiculous, out-of-control stuff. You really can't enjoy the game. So I'm going to just watch the game from home, but we'll be there on the Blue Jays Talk for All Facebook page, bringing you some great conversations. So make sure, don't be shy. Join the Jays from the Couch Blue Jays Talk for All Facebook group today. We're going to start with our Outside the Box Score segment. The main topic is going to be a fun one, and that'll be in our next Fekless Wonder segment. We're going to talk about If you had a chance to be the general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays at any time in their history, what time would you have picked? Well, but what's going to be coming up next? I want to go outside the box score. And when we're watching games and we're talking to each other on social media or around the water cooler or at the bar or, out in the salt pit, wherever it is, we're always calling for changes especially when a player repeatedly fails or just plain sucks. But we don't often think through what the changes that we're screaming about and calling for might actually mean in a box score, in game results, in a position in the standings. So I want to take a little bit of time and take a look at two particular things that I think are most commonly spoken about on social media as well as amongst ourselves. And certainly I know these conversations go on behind the scenes at Jays from the Couch in our articles, talking with ourselves. We have little message boards set up so we can go back and forth and bounce ideas off of each other. And remember that Newton's third law of physics plainly states that every action has an opposite and equal reaction. That's just nature. Now, the law of Fekless Wonders clearly states that every repeated negative action on the field requires a prompt reaction by the front office. Somehow, the laws of physics, or at least Fekless Wonder physics here as they pertain to baseball, don't always get proven out. Somehow they try to be ignored. They try to be smarter than the Fekless Wonder musings about roster construction, about our team here. But even among ourselves, we don't always get what we want, to paraphrase the Rolling Stones. We don't always get what we want. The thing I think most of us talk about, some more politely than others, some more hopefully than others, is Brandon Belt. Now, I don't want to go back and rehash every rant I have had about Brandon Belt since the signing occurred in the offseason. I think at this stage, everyone will concede it was a bad signing. If for nothing else, we're not getting the bang from the buck that we're paying him. He signed for $9.3 million. That is money that easily could have been spent other places, including the second topic we're going to have here in outside the box score. Personally, I know everybody says, "Oh, I mean, Mark Atkins always says, "Oh, well, we wait for about the first 50 games or so to see what we really have, what's really going on." Anyone that watches baseball on an even semi-regular basis can see Brandon Belt at the plate. He's at best uncomfortable, but more probably he's overmatched at this stage of his career. I liked Brandon Belt as a player with the Giants. And from what I understand, as a person in the locker room, he's a terrific asset. But the bottom line is the Blue Jays are supposed to be a World Series team. That doesn't carry over into the box score. So whether or not we just put Brandon Belt on the bench, I mean, in theory, he's a threat. He's going to make opposing managers think about the fact that Brandon Belt could drive one to the gap. Or maybe I want to say he's not really a home run threat per se, but he could get a big hit in key situations because he is that veteran and he's been there before. It's time to, at the very least, get him out of the lineup as far as you want to play him once a week or whatever, fine. I mean, personally, I would just bite the bullet. And if I was Ross Atkins, I would say, okay, it was a good idea. It didn't work out. And we just DFA him. It gives him enough time to potentially latch on somewhere else. though I can't imagine. And again, it's major league minimum, so then that kind of a risk makes sense if you can get him for the major league minimum and not pay him $9.3 million. So Blue Jays are on the hook for that. But either way, you don't necessarily then need to go and trade for a regular left-handed bat to replace Brandon Belt in the lineup, because the opposite reaction to the action of DFA and we're putting him on the bench is players that maybe don't have as a steady or defined role at the moment can now step into more regular appearances, into a more comfortable role. And the first place I look at really is DH. Alejandro Kirk can now get more at bats as a DH. I think that is important going down into the season. Kirk, he's still a young player. It seems like he's been here forever, but he's still a young player. I don't know that he is as comfortable calling a game, handling in-game decisions as, let's say, Danny Jansen, a more seasoned and, by all accounts, a better defensive catcher. So now you've got Kirk DHing more. The days that he's not DHing, you're still being able to rotate people for rest if you want to give Chapman a rest here and there, if you want to give one of the outfielders, whether it be Springer or Kiermaier or Varsho, a rest. You still have those things available. Brandon Belt is not, the boulder in the road. I mean, you can kind of maneuver around it if you take your time, but you're kind of dangerously kind of on the cliffside there. You want to get that boulder out of the way. So you either put him on the bench and say, Brandon, you're a bench player the rest of the year, or you DFA him. That gives Kirk more times at DH. It also, I think, allows Whit Merrifield and Cavan Biggio to settle into their timeshare at second base. I would imagine that Whitfield, out of the 7 games, he's going to play 5 of them, maybe 4 of them, depending on the matchups. Biggio could either come in later for defense or whatever it be. And it also allows Santiago Espinal to slide back into that bench player / utility player that I think he is better suited for. If you DFA him, I know everybody's saying Barger. Putting aside for a moment that he's hurt right now, that he's having some elbow issues, he really needs at least until the All-Star break to be able to kind of settle into the routine of regular at-bats, regular playing time. I think with the bat, I think he could play in the majors on a regular basis, but I think he would benefit even more, and the Blue Jays will benefit even more if you give him extended time still down there at AAA Buffalo. Otto Lopez could come up. He is more of a utility type of player. And our Ryan Mueller, and by the way, if you are not following at jasonthecouch.com, Ryan Mueller's daily minor league recaps, you need to start doing so. You need to set yourself a reminder, find time in your day to read them. No one does it better. No source does it better. No person does it better than Ryan Mueller and Jason the Couch. So make sure you do that. He had suggested that Ernie Clement, who has been looking good at the plate down there in Buffalo, he's got major league experience both in Oakland and Cleveland. So he could also be that bench player, utility player, and the lineup without Brandon Belt, I think, becomes better, becomes more productive. It's not the ball and chain. It's not Prometheus pushing the boulder up the hill, spots 1 through 5, 1 through 6, then have that boulder roll down when Brandon Belt either takes a pitch on the inside or can't get around on a pitch on the inside or weakly grounds out or pops up. That experiment should be over and should be done. The other area that us fans are complaining a lot about is the bullpen. Now, the bullpen situation could easily have been addressed and filled with some of that, if not all of that $9.3 million we handed to Brandon Belt. That's not what this discussion is about. It's about, okay, we want Jimmy Garcia out of the 8th inning. We want this. We want Pop. We want Simber. We want Swanson, whatever we're saying in our conversations with each other, the bullpen, the roles are not yet defined. And that's really where that 50 games comes in, I think, is the manager and the front office getting their bullpen in place. And if they have players that are not succeeding in roles, then you go out on the market and you try to obtain it, because the Blue Jays certainly don't have it in the minors. I agree. Jimmy Garcia, he was given the opportunity to be the setup guy, the guy to hand the ball over to Romano. He's not that guy. He proved that in Miami when he was a Marlin. Yes, he was a closer. Yes, he did have stretches where he looked very, very good. He was very, very inconsistent and gave up the long ball, even in a very pitcher-friendly park like the Miami Marlins Stadium, whatever they're calling it these days. He failed and he lost. He was given every opportunity to be the closer in Miami, and he squandered that opportunity. He's not that guy. I do think he is a guy you can bring in the 6th or the 7th inning. And I also think now Simber will be back eventually, hopefully, that rhomboid strain. And that's tough. That's tough because it's the muscle. It kind of attaches to the scapula and leads down over, near the spine. And if you're a side armor, softball pitchers, women's softball pitchers, or fast pitch softball players experience rhomboid discomfort quite often. And that's the issue here with him, with his delivery and the drop down. That rhomboid is a major problem for an Adam Simber. When he gets back, the Blue Jays should have we're winning bullpen and we're losing bullpen. And that's where the roles are. And unless you have like a weird out of control game, these guys pitch when they're winning. So you look at Romano as the closer. Eric Swanson is the closer in waiting. Should Romano get hurt? Should Romano need some rest? Eric Swanson is your 8th inning guy. Then you've got Tim Mays as your situational lefty. You've got Simber. You have Nate Pearson. If you're winning, those are the guys that you're using depending on when you have to bring him in. And even on the scoreboard, if your relievers are coming in before the 7th inning, you're losing. I'll give you 5 1/3, 5 2/3 out of your starter. But in essence, if you're not getting length out of your starters, that's what you're using. You're losing bullpen pitchers. Not that they're losers, but that's when you bring them in. That's when you bring in the Trevor Richards and Anthony Bass to have pitch bulk innings. Pop. I should really clarify. Maybe Nate Pearson needs to be pitching in some more of those lower leverage things. They would be pitching later in the game, but lower leverage situations till he gets comfortable, till he builds that confidence. There's enough people with Garcia maybe coming in the 6th or 7th as opposed to coming in the 8th that you've got your bullpen setting up there. So when we're calling for these things, look at the box score and say, okay, what would happen if Brandon Belt is benched or Brandon Belt is released? And what would happen if John Schneider changes the makeup of the bullpen? That's what we need to think about. Time now for the feature of tonight's program, which is our Fekless Wonder. And I was wondering, and all of you out there that are listening to us live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, if you have an answer or you have a belief in what this topic is going to be, please do put your comments in there. We'll be happy to get it up there so we can share it with the audience. But I wonder if, given the chance to change roles with any Blue Jays GM during their time in that general manager's chair, who would you want to be? And when would you want to be general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays? Now, the Blue Jays have had a series of GMs. Peter Bavasi was there in 1977 for the inaugural expansion year. Really, I don't know that he would have been the ideal choice, but because of the late coming together of the expansion bids. Remember, I mean, like the Marlins, the Rockies, the Rays, and Diamondbacks all had at least 2 years prior to the expansion draft and the expansion season to set themselves up. The Blue Jays could very well have would not be the Blue Jays. They could have well been the Giants. San Francisco had an agreement to move to Toronto. So Toronto, that's why I put Toronto on the map and put them on the fast track. But to settle a lawsuit and to have another team go in with Seattle to settle that lawsuit, suddenly Toronto was an expansion team. So Peter Bavasi, because his dad had extensive experience as a GM, he had some success in San Diego in various roles. It made sense to bring him in. But right after that was Pat Gillick, 1978 to 1994. And the 2 years we all think about so much is 92 and 93. But he built this organization. And I've told this story before. If it was Pat Gillick in the GM seat and not Peter Bavasi, Ron Guidry would have been a Toronto Blue Jays at the trading deadline in 1977. And they would have got rid of a broken down, short-armed Bill Singer and gotten that contract off the books. But Pat Gillick, yeah, I mean, it would seem like he's the no-brainer. And I asked my colleagues, Shaun Doyle and Karen Suter, where would they want to be GMs? Now, Karen was pretty resolute. She wanted to be a GM during Alex Anthopoulos' time, but she specifically said 2015. And the reason why is she felt that with one deal, and the one deal in particular she mentioned was Rowdy Tellez going for Ben Zobrist, which AA turned down. That could have been that piece that would have gotten the Blue Jays to the World Series in 2015. When I talked to Shaun kind of split his ballot. Shaun said that he would want to have been there in 92 and 93 during Gillick's last couple of years there when they won the back-to-back World Championships. He would want that success, but he would rather have been the GM when J.P. Ricciardi was there. Now, in between Gillick and Ricciardi was the hapless Gordash. A great story, native Canadian, started in the ticket booth, worked his way up to general manager of the team. He was clearly overmatched, put in a bad situation, but clearly overmatched as a general manager. It unraveled very, very quickly for him. Siding with Cito Gaston against many of his young hitters, I think further poisoned the water. But Gordash begat us J.P. Ricciardi. When Ricciardi failed, we had AA, Alex Anthopoulos. And then, of course, when Mark Shapiro forced him out the door, Ross Atkins has taken over. It would be easy for me to say I would want to be Pat Gillick because, in essence, I was there as the assistant GM for an expansion team and built an organization up to winning seasons in 83, 84, 85, winning the AL East, 87, except for the collapse and bad managing by Jimmy Williams, they would have won another AL East all the way through. Cito Gaston taken over in 89 in the World Championships. And since I'm always complaining about Ross Atkins, you would think that the Fekless Wonder would say, well, I want to be Ross Atkins because I want to show you what I could have done with this team, how we could have been more competitive much quicker than with Ross Atkins at the helm. But I don't know that it's a good time to have been the GM. For me, as much as it would have been easier to be the GM during Gordash's time to a certain degree, now keep in mind the team, was then overtaken by Interbrew, and there was a lot of financial constraints put on the team. So his hands were tied in a lot of ways, and he wasn't exactly the most dexterous general manager as it was, so he couldn't afford to have his hands tied for anything. I would want to be GM during J.P. Ricciardi's time. Why? Well, it really coincided with Rodgers purchasing the team. I mean, Gord Ash was still the GM when Rodgers first took over the Blue Jays. But in essence, payroll steadily increased over the first 3 years of Rich Hardy's reign of misadventure. So they had a $200 million payroll. One reason that I would want to be there is the one thing above all else that I'll talk about is I would have made sure that Carlos Delgado, the man who should be in the Hall of Fame, the man whose number should be retired by the Blue Jays, that he was a Blue Jay for life. I realized he was a little bit outspoken and that rubbed some people in the front office the wrong way. But Carlos Delgado should never have gone to the Marlins and then the Mets. He should have been a Blue Jay for life. And if you have the increased payroll and you're going to spend it on the likes of Benji Molina and BJ Ryan and Lyle Overbay, you could have better spent that money on a long-term contract with Carlos Delgado. That would have been the first thing I would have been able to do if I was the GM during Rich Hardy's time. Then I look at the draft. Rich Hardy got a lot of credit early in his tenure for how well he drafted. And I think he did do well as far as finding role players and, extra arms, organizational depth in later rounds. But in the first couple of rounds, Rich Hardy had some really infamous missteps. Now, in fairness, when I go through this list, a lot of other GMs that drafted, after him also could have had some of these players. But let's just take a look at some of the players that I would have drafted if I was JP Rich Hardy during that time. In 2003, Aaron Hill was generally considered the best draft pick that Rich Hardy ever made. And Aaron Hill was a nice player. I personally would much rather have had Adam Jones. I realized they had some good young outfielders. Adam Jones was special. I mean, he was originally an infielder and then was converted to an outfielder and had a great career in Seattle and Baltimore. But I would have taken Adam Jones. 2005 is the one area that people really jump and point to and say JP Rich Hardy was a moron, which he was. But we'll do a JP Rich Hardy only show later. But in 2005, he picked Ricky Romero, who was an all-star pitcher. He had his moments. And that was one of the big things with Rich Hardy, wanting to improve the Blue Jays pitching, which he did in other areas by bringing in BJ Ryan and signing AJ Burnett. But in the 2005 draft, these are some of the names that were drafted after Ricky Romero was picked. Andrew McCutchen, Jay Bruce, Matt Garza, a much better pitcher, a more successful pitcher in the majors than Ricky Romero, and Troy Tulowitzki, who AA had to then pay through the nose to actually bring to Toronto in 2015, but that's another question. Any of those guys could have been in Toronto. 2006, Ian Kennedy over Travis Snyder, the much beleaguered Travis Snyder. In 2007, when they picked Kevin Aarons, who didn't even sign, they could have had Todd Frazier, who was a Jersey boy, and following him through his Little League days, he would have been a perfect Blue Jay, great leader. Rick Porcello were also there. In 2008, talk about pitching depth. Rather than paying David Cooper $1.5 million, they could have had Garrett Cole. Now, in fairness, Cole was going to UCLA. His favorite team was the Yankees. The Yankees drafted him. He still went to college. Jake Odorizzi, Wade Miley, Lance Lynn, Jordan Lyles, all would have been better choices than David Cooper. And in 2009, Kyle Gibson, Randall Grichuk, the guy that they could have had early on. Or this unknown kid that maybe a lot of people think might be overrated, but he's from South Jersey. His name's Mike Trout. He was on the board when the Blue Jays took Chad Jenkins. So there were so many opportunities to build a lasting organization, just as Gillick had done during Rich Hardy's regime, and it did not work out. So that's very, very unfortunate. Before we go, make sure you let us know in the comments if you're watching this and downloading it as a podcast, who would you rather have been as the GM? I want to see if we got some wisdom coming from our fortune cookie this week. A cheerful letter or message is on its way to you. It's the On Fek Circle, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you join into the to watch the podcast or download the podcast hosted by Shaun Doyle, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Mondays. And coming up on Thursday, Karen Suter, Sunny Side of the Dome, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us on the Blue Jays Talk for All Facebook page this weekend as I report live from PNC Park when the Jays take on the Pirates. I'm the Fekless Wonder, Steve Fek. Thanks for tuning in. See you next Tuesday.